Um, Thaddeus, thank you so much for taking the time to indulge me in this passion project called Panic and Patience. I admire you. I look up to you. You have done so much for our community and have reached back time and time again. Even when you didn't have the time, you figured out a way to make the time. And this whole podcast is really predicated on, highlighting change agents and really getting the audience to understand that there's this conflicting emotion for a lot of us who are community leaders or leaders in your space of panic and patience, and panic leaning more towards not the literal sense, but more or less this sense of urgency that things need to change, things need to happen, and you are the sort of catalyst for that, whether that be in artwork, whether that be in music, whether that be in policy, all these different facets of our community. There are people in positions that want to see something move and push forward, but also have an understanding that anything significant takes time, and that regardless of the barriers, regardless of the challenges, that we got to push through. And so I see you as sort of, a representation of that. And I'm truly humbled and honored that you took the time to join me today.
Brother, I think the thing for me is something that you don't always know. We spent a year together last year. But, I've been watching you for at least 5 years, from when you were at Emerson doing the creative arts and bringing in films. And so I'm humbled and honored to be in your presence, because just listening to you, watching you, seeing how you are with your children, has impacted my life greatly. Because that's that beauty of seeing Black men living into their manhood, and being able to take care of family, be creative, not be fearful of being completely Black and being who you are. And so I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity to be part of your the panic and patience, right?
Yeah.
I'm in that mood every 5 minutes. I'm switching from one to the other. So I'm
Right.
very very happy to be here. And I just want to say I'm honored, and I love you, brother. And I'm looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, man. And so I like to always start off my podcast with asking my guests to tell me a story. And I know you have lived a life, so I am sure you have a story for me, man. What you got for me today?
So I got a couple of stories, but I'm gonna give two. I'm gonna do two real quick stories, because I know we only have a little bit of time. So 2 years ago, I got my first opportunity to go to Africa and teach photography. And so I'm thinking about it, thinking about what can I do, and thinking about all of these changes. How do I teach young people and photography in Africa? And I get on the plane, and I'm super nervous, and I'm super nervous the whole time. It's a 15-hour flight. I got a nice seat. I'm chilling, and I land, and I see a gentleman with my name to pick me up with his, the sign there, right? My driver. And I walk up to him, and the first thing that he says is, "Welcome home, brother." Right? So for me, all I could do was embrace him, and my heart was filled at that moment. And we're still friends today. Because we drove like an hour to where I was going, and we talked. I met his son. I got to photograph him and his son. And it was just an amazing thing of welcome home, right?
Did you feel that way? Did you feel like you were at home? Like when you had that? Yeah.
When he said it, I felt it, and I'm almost ready to tear up now, just sort of reliving it, because we have that thing that we reconnect, reflect, and renew, right? And so it's reconnecting. At that point, I was able to reconnect with my ancestors just in that moment, to reflect on that moment, and to renew. And so all of those things went through me very quickly, and it was a powerful moment in just our conversation. It's just like we're talking now, man. It was like he was my brother that I've known and that I've missed for for 20 years, right? That I haven't talked to for 20 years. It was just a beautiful moment, and I can relive it vividly just talking to you. So that's how much that meant. I would say the second story was when I wrote my first book. It's a photography book, Grace, Joy, and Faith. I had the opportunity to talk to my mom, and I went home for a week and just talked to her about stories, and because I wanted to learn more about grace and the grace of my grandmother, who I never had the opportunity to meet because she died giving birth to her youngest child. And my mom told me some amazing stories about her. But at the same time, she started talking to me. We were talking about, I'm like, hey, how was it when I was born? Because I was born in home, in my mom's house. And she's like, boy, you gave me so much trouble, through my birth. But she's like, up to the day before you were born, I was picking, because she worked in the field. She's like, I was picking greens in Virginia. And that was in the winter, in February. I was born February 22nd. And she's like, I picked greens for several days until icicles formed on my hand to make sure that you had what it is that you were going to need to be a successful young man. Because I knew bringing a boy, because she's like, I just felt that you were going to be a boy into this world was going to be much more difficult than your sister who was born 2 years earlier. And so I wanted to make sure that you had opportunities. And so listening to that story, and we went a lot deeper, right? And it would take this whole hour that we have for me to dive into that. But that is part of the reason I believe that I do some of the community work that I do, because her transferring that work ethic, that grace, those expectations in me before the world saw me, you know what I mean, by her own challenges and what she wanted for me has helped create the purpose that I believe God gave her and gave me. So those will be my two stories.
Now, in connecting those two, when you came home from Africa, having that experience and that conversation with your mother and sort of reflecting on what she had to do to bring you into this world and to make sure that you had the things that you needed, and then going back home to Africa,
right.
Coming back, when you reflected on those experiences, did it validate all the different things that you have done in this moment, or did it say, or did you tell yourself, I got to do even more? I got to push even further? Because sometimes, when we get to that point, we've done so much, and people praise us and, get the accolades and all of that. And then you kind of coast a little bit. You're just like, I've done what I thought I was supposed to do. And then a life event happens, and some way, somehow it shifts. And so those stories to me are so closely connected, even though they're probably very separate in terms of the time. But as far as the root of it, it seems like those two go hand in hand. So I'm interested to know how you felt and having those two experiences. Once you landed back in the States, what did Thaddeus say to himself? Okay, I'm going to live the rest of my life in this way and do these things.
Yeah, I definitely felt like I needed to do more. Because there's one thing we all watch Black Panther, we got the Wakanda, right? And we think that's how Africa really is, right, to some degree. And I was perplexed because when I went to Africa, I was staying in a luxury hotel, right? The mall across the street was mostly ran by Black people. It was all high-end stores, right? It's like being in Copley, right? And so it was great. But then I got in the van to go teach photography, and it's 20 minutes away, and I go into to a town that they have 50 porta potties lined up. And I'm like, why do they have all these porta potties? And they have locks on them. And so each porta potty is assigned to between 50 and 70 families. and that's what they use for the restroom. I was there where people still didn't have running water into their homes. I was invited into homes where still the ground was the floor and they didn't have really any electricity. The aspect of food was a challenge, right? And so that was just one place. And then I went to another place that was an AIDS orphanage, and did photography there, taught photography and did their portraits. But what I learned was there's many people that go there and take photos, but rarely leave them. I ended up printing out almost 3,000 photos to be able to give them their photos for themselves, for the organizations, and the challenges that were there. And then I also got to meet one of the gentlemen that was, his house was firebombed. It was in Alexandria Township. He's met with Queen Elizabeth. He's one of those Mandela types. And he hasn't left his home, even though he's a millionaire. He still lives in that community by 1 million people. He turned the home that was firebombed into a community center. And him and I had a conversation about what it is to give and to continue to give until you can no longer give. And that is part of our purpose. And then I think the other thing for me, that when I was in Cape Town, I got to be with some seniors and learn from the seniors, and we danced and we sang and we did a lot of other things, right? And that just told me that I really haven't done enough, right? That I need to do more, but I need to find a different way to do it, right? That I can't necessarily do it the same way that I was doing it, because that was great. But now that I've actually got an understanding of my ancestors, my heritage, and my expectations, because they read me as a black man there and what my purpose was, and they gave me a name of Tao, which means king, right? And it's like that Lion King, and that my expectations are great, and that my leadership needs to be extended. And I told them what I did. They said, "That's great, but how do you do more? How do you do more for your people? Not necessarily there in Africa, but for where you were at, how do you do more?" And so I've been trying ever since, in whatever way. But before that, I was sort of coasting. So the Africa trip, to be honest with you, was now I can just coast. I can just do some photography. My son's out of college. I don't really have those bills. I can spend some of my money and do what I want to do. So it really changed my thought process, and that's why I'm digging in a little bit differently. But I'm digging in by supporting those that have not traditionally been supported, figuring out how to raise their voice, because it doesn't need to be my voice that's creating change, but it can be me helping somebody else get in the room that they could never get in, get exposure that they could never get people to listen to their voice, and truly listen to it and act on it. And I think that's really been the way that I've figured out how to sort of switch my impact from necessarily having to do the work. Because as you get older and you see a little bit more of this gray up here, you don't necessarily have the energy that you normally have when I was much younger.
And so what were some of the things that you did prior to leaving for Africa from a community standpoint? And then once you got here, what were the things that you decided to embark on once you got back? So the community stuff you did before, and then how it shifted once you got back.
Yeah, so I think it's sort of like you talked. So I probably gotten 50 awards, right? From the head of the FBI, from the Kennedy Foundation, to the local community group. So I think it was more of, at that time, I would say I started several nonprofits and probably been able to get $20 million out the door into our community in different ways. And not just through where I work, but through other avenues. I've started a national nonprofit where we were serving over 250,000 young people around technology and 100,000 adults. I started HoodFit, which is really around the movement of understanding the value of growing up in the hood, the challenges that we face, and if we can actually tap into that as a younger age and use it to build ourselves, that is as strong as having a second language. We're not ashamed of where we grew. I started several other organizations. We created the first 5K that runs through Roxbury, the black community in Boston. That's founded by a black person, has the race director is black, and we're certified, and we're the only 5K that runs through that's actually led and developed by black people.
Wow.
And we didn't ask for permission. We just did it. And then we went from the first run was 126 people, and now we're over 1,000 people around policy, mentoring, and other components, and funding a lot of the traditionally left out black nonprofit organizations. So those were the things. I could keep going, but those were the things that I would say the essence of. And I was also doing a little bit of photography, and that's what led to me teaching. When I came back, I decided that I needed to dive deeper into creating aspects for young people to explore and give them time and the opportunity to fail without hitting the ground, right? That I'm behind them and they can feel the wind, and maybe it's pushing them down, but I'm behind them enough that they're not going to hit the ground. I also figured out how to build part of my own, advisory board, right? So those are one of the things that I did, was because before I was like more of a lot of people that know me think I'm this extrovert, but I'm really an introvert, right? I'm really the quiet, laid back. I'm good at being at home, right? But I built that cabinet, right? I built that kitchen cabinet and that advisory board of black men and women and young people that could help advise me how to move forward and how to think about issues differently, where to stand up, and where to stand down, and by doesn't mean I'm not always gonna be a stand-up guy, but sometimes it's like I'm trying to step forward when I really need to step back and let somebody else sort of lead that. Whereas before I'd just be all in, sort of on my own, and have an idea and just gonna run with it. So now I'm really sort of building coalition, thinking about how to succession planning, like who's the next person coming up behind me that should have that opportunity, and that I can groom, that whenever I'm moved in whatever way, that they will be able to take it over, but they do it their way and not have to do it my way, and that my large, view or whatever it is, that my legacy doesn't prevent them from being able to do what it is that they want to do in their lives. Right? That they're standing on it and going to the next level and not trying to replicate what it is that they believe I achieved. But I'm also being a little bit more authentic around my own trials and tribulations, because we as black men don't always want to talk about our own struggles. And so I'm making sure that I'm, when I'm talking to young people or anybody, that I'm real about my own challenges and about my own aspect of faith, and where I've lost faith at times. And where I've had to come through that struggle to lift myself up, and not be afraid to let the tears flow, and to let them understand that what manhood really begins to look like.
And that's a really interesting point you bring up, is because particularly now, with the cultural and political climate, the gravity of it is so heavy for the Black community, for everyone in the Black community. But I think for men, it's more, I feel like it's in some ways it's more difficult, because we have been taught to not say how we're actually feeling and just kind of like push through. And like you said, like not cry and not really express ourselves, and just show strength and strength in this box, right? Like strength only has to look like this thing, And so could you give me a little bit of insight of how you've what do you feel strength is for men, but Black men in particular, centered around what we're dealing with day to day, from the, the political and cultural climate where, it's difficult for us to even be in the streets and feel safe, let alone what we have to deal with our children, raising a family, being a provider, like all the different aspects of it, of you, that you have to be as a man, but as a Black man in particular. I think there's a different layer of strength that I think that we don't actually talk about, or express in a way that's not sort of stereotypical.
Yeah, I think it's there's not a day that my son goes out the door that I'm not worried, right? As a Black man, and we had that conversation. It's not a moment when he calls, even when he's checking in on me, that I'm not worried what that call means, right? It's not time. Yeah, you know what I mean. Yeah. Even when he's texting, I see the text pop up, but I don't see the message. I'm worried about whatever it is, especially in today's climate. I think so for me, strength is vulnerability, right? And being able to be vulnerable enough to those that you love, to allow them to help you maintain that strength of who you are as a individual. Strength is being true to you, right? Because today, with all of these gender issues around, Black men, so we don't just have the issue of us being killed. It's around gender identity. It's around us being how we're perceived by white folks and how we're perceived by our own community, right? There's many days that I'm finding, am I Black enough, right? So, as a man, that's a challenge. And I'll go through that with, when I first started photography, I started shooting a lot of florals, and I love to shoot flowers. And I was told that that's not Black art. And I'm like, I was trying to figure out what the hell Black art is. So, for a while, I didn't show anything. But I think strength is understanding that you need others in order to stand tall, right? And understanding and being in connection with who you are as an individual, being vulnerable enough to have real and honest conversations with those that you love and those that love you, because I don't have conversations with everybody, right? To have the courage to stand and to step into a space that's uncomfortable for you, and to be able to tell others that look like you, other men, what you believe manhood really is. And I think it's that courage of understanding womanhood, and what that really is, and being able to protect your woman and to be able to have real conversations with your woman or your partner, right? And to I think the other thing that's challenging is understanding resilience, right? And to be able to live through a life of joy and not just through anger and pain. To be able to show a smile, to be able to say I love you, right? To be able to show I love you. That's to your brother that you love. That's to your sister that you love. That's to your wife, your girlfriend, your partner. To be able to share those words honestly, and not have fear be the lead in what it is. But I also think, what would I say? Is to address, strength is addressing the trauma of your past so that you can be stronger in your future.
Now, right? Do you think that is it a process or a goal? Like, do you think that as you've grown and lived life, you have reached that? Or do you feel like you are a work in progress and it's a constant thing that you have to evolve as your life, evolves?
I definitely haven't reached it, right?
Okay.
I'm evolving to it each and every day, because
Yeah,
each
'cause
and every day.
I think that's such a, to admit that, I think is so powerful, because I feel like a lot of us won't admit that we are still, regardless of age, a work in progress. It seems like a work in progress is something you do when you're young, and then when you get
Right,
older, it's just like, I'm
right,
done. I'm good. I'm
right,
good.
right.
I'm grown, right?
Yeah, I'm a
And
grown ass man.
exactly. And then the learning aspect seems to diminish, whether that's emotional intelligence, learning about different things in life. And so I find that so powerful that, someone of your stature still can admit that you are still a work in progress, even though you're able to identify these things as it relates to manhood and strength and vulnerability. I think that's incredible.
Yeah,
The next question I have for you is, you mentioned a lot of your community work, and one of the projects that I love what you're doing. I was actually able to attend, if I'm not mistaken, the first event,
yeah.
for the Black Joy project. Can you tell me, what was the thoughts behind that inspiration, and where do you see that going, moving forward?
Yeah, so as you know, we're both in Lead Boston, which is
Mhm.
a great program for a year, and you have to come out with a 1 year project that you're going to do after Lead Boston. For those that don't know what Lead Boston is, and I started looking at what people are doing, and I'm like, I've already done enough, at work. I've done a lot in the community.
Mhm.
uh, what is it that I really want to tap into to help myself grow, but also to help the community think about things differently? And so what I decided is one of the things that I feel like is missing a lot from the narrative of Black folks is how much joy is our resilience, right? And how joy really builds us to be able to withstand a lot of the challenges that we're facing today, and to be able to move through them and pass them and to push them out of the way. And
Mhm.
so I decided I wanted to do this Black Joy project to do a couple of different things. So one was to use my photography to showcase Black joy. Uh, Not just here in Boston, but internationally. So I had all these travel plans, you was going to hook me up, but all of that's, sort of shut down now with
Mhm.
Paris, but I had these travel plans on that.
Yeah.
Uh, Two was to create an experience for multiple people to experience the aspect of Black joy as I see it. So that was the first event that we had at the MFA, where we had dancers, we had singers, we had spoken word, we had one of the few 50 in the history of the Navy SEALs. We had another young man that is a change agent in Connecticut that takes people to young people to Africa that are, their grades don't have to be great. They're not the exceptional kids, but they're kids that need to explore that. And just having that event where he was $8,000 short of being able to fund this trip,
Beautiful.
and within 5 minutes of him saying that after speaking, the money was raised. You know what I mean? So the joy that he felt from that, the joy that I felt opening it up with some music, and then us singing together, and me praying. I think that's the first time, and that most of those people that were in that room ever even heard me pray, even
Mhm.
though most of them know I pray every morning at 3 a.m. So it was to create those things. But then the last part was to show the different aspects of Black joy, right? So for me, whether you're a Cape Verdean, Jamaican, African, Afro Latina,
Yeah.
whatever it is, there's an aspect of Blackness there that I wanted to be able to showcase. And so the last event was going to be called The Gathering, which I'm pushing off now, which
Mhm.
is to bring the entire diaspora of Blackness, as I see it, together to celebrate us, all right, and to show the beauty of us, and to interconnect us through our spirit, right, of spending that time to sort of reconnect again back to our ancestors. In that moment that we're in that room, to be able to sort of reconnect is different. And so I'll tell you something about the Black Joy, the event that you were at. I have a friend of mine that attended.
Mm-hmm.
He's Jewish and he's an atheist, right? Which is like, I've never really seen the two,
Right.
but afterwards he told me, man, I sang with you and I prayed with you. That's what, and he felt that, right? And it didn't change his, his overall feelings, but he was there, right? He was in that space and he got to experience blackness in its wholeness.
Yeah.
And, and sort of like me and Conan laughing and joking, right? About like when I was asking, I'm like, I don't see him because he's too dark.
Right, right.
And then he cracks back, right? And, but, that's that joy of being able to laugh and smile. And nobody left there that didn't feel good, right? And
that was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I go in the community now, some of the seniors that attend, oh, you're the Black Joy guy, right? And so it's really to get people to experience a moment, to be able to read it, to be able to think about it, and to be able to reconnect in their joy in that moment. We're about to launch a short story and essay contest around Black Joy, what that looks like for young people and adults. We're about to do some more videography contests around it, and not necessarily around the COVID, but just what Black Joy looks like for them. And so really to sort of expose it more, and so that people will have a space that they could go and experience joy and to reflect back on joy, but to see a different narrative, because like one of the things I just photographed, I've been photographing a lot of the marches. I've been out, I've been in Philly, DC, Virginia, and here in Boston. Mm-hmm. And so I shot a young man that had his daughter, and he was crying, and his daughter was crying. And so if you see that picture in social media, you would think that is about George Floyd or about some of the other components. Mm-hmm. But I took a moment to talk to him, and he was there because of all that we as Black men have went through. But the moment that I captured, what he said was, he's like, and I know him, and he's like, Thaddeus, I wasn't crying because of that. I was crying because my 7-year-old daughter said, Dad, this is beautiful to see this many Black people together lifting their voice. So she was wise beyond her years, right? Wow. And so for him, that was the first time that he's actually experienced that and saw the beauty of it. And so when he started crying, of course, his daughter started crying because she thought she had said something wrong.
Right.
But so for me, it's like capturing and being able to tell that story versus the story of, this person's crying because of the pain that he suffered. And some of that joy comes through pain. Right. But to be able to get to that. And so that's really what we're trying to do. We're going to have to extend it for a little bit longer because of COVID. I was trying to do it for 1 year, but try to get it through next summer so I can sort of move that through. But I don't think I'm ever going to stop trying to express Black joy and show Black joy in different ways. But the project in itself will probably stop
now
next summer.
Now, first of all, I love the idea. I think it's a beautiful project to embark on. I'm interested to know, for those who don't know, the MFA is a Museum of Fine Arts. Mm-hmm. You did your kickoff of Black Joy at the Museum of Fine Arts. And a lot of folks in Boston have not traditionally been invited in the doors of the.
Yeah, you just said it's real.
Right. And so to be in a space that traditionally and historically has not welcomed Black people that look like us from all different aspects of the diaspora, and to do an event like that, was that intentional, or the stars just aligned and it just happened? What were your thoughts, like, as you was at the back of the stage and you looked at the audience and realized where you were and what you were doing and what the purpose of bringing those people there? It wasn't just like, hey, let's get together and have fun. Like, there was a lot of intention to each aspect of the program. What was the feelings around that for you?
Well, I think first of all, like I've been going to the museum for like 10 years,
Mm-hmm.
right? I love to when I travel. I love to go to museums, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't. It's rare that I see people that look like me, unless I'm in New York, and then I see a lot of folks that look like me if
Mm-hmm.
I'm in certain museums. Um, but it was intentional. It was intentional to be at the MFA because one, I wanted young people and others to know that this is our house,
Mm-hmm.
right? This isn't somebody else's house. This is our house. And we have just as much of a right to be here as anybody else. And I'm not going to walk in someplace and feel uncomfortable. I need you to be in that space. I need them to understand that you're in that space. Uh, and I need you to understand that you can enjoy this space because it's yours.
Mm-hmm.
Like that space is open to many people, but very few of us use it, right? There was some amazing displays of Black history, and young people had done some amazing, curated the whole spine of the MFA
Mm-hmm.
a week before that, but very few Black people that came to actually see it, right? Except for those of us that were connected. So people to, I want people to feel sort of the way that I feel at times about art and art institutions and art spaces that we belong,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, this thing of we always hear if we don't have a seat at the table, we bring our own seat.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's what I was doing,
Right.
right? I
Right.
was creating our own space, and we're not gonna ask you for permission on how we're gonna do something. We're gonna come in, we're gonna take that space, and we're gonna do what it is that we do with it. The same way that I think they had a MFA late night Black night,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where
Mm-hmm.
or they had the Latino night where they had 3,000 Latinos in there. This is our space. It's been underutilized. We've allowed people to make us feel unwelcome because we haven't challenged the conventional wisdom of their leadership. And
Mm-hmm.
so for me, is I'm walking through the door with my shoulders back and with my chest high, saying I belong here. I'm going to create Black joy in here. I'm going to create other opportunities for people of color that look like me in here. You finally got somebody Black that I can talk to in here, so I'm gonna, so we're gonna make sure that that we do that. But at the same time, we can't leave her on that island by herself,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? We push and we push and we push for them to hire somebody of color to sort of help move uh, opportunities for us to be in that space. Then how do we not use it,
Mm-hmm.
right? I don't have that sort of mentality. I feel like if we've got a person in there that can welcome us, then we need to actually make sure that we have her back by using the space. But we also at the same time have to create this opportunity for us to do things and to show our young people that you belong.
Absolutely.
They don't treat you right, we're gonna make sure that they treat you right because we're gonna change some stuff. We're not gonna run away and hide in our community and say we're never going back there. I'm not really sure what that does, right? Especially in the museums because they're not getting our money anyway, right?
Mm-hmm.
To that degree, and if they haven't traditionally received our funds over the years, and then why would it matter that we don't actually come?
Right. Right.
And
Why would they
so,
create content that represent us if we're not engaged with what they're
right.
putting
And
out
so
there?
yeah, we're not. I'm saying I'm not just gonna have you create like they're doing this great thing with pro black and some other pieces now, but I'm gonna be in there. I'm
Yeah.
going to create some stuff in there, and I'm going to bring some other people in there to create some stuff. So I'm looking for when you do whatever it is you're going to do in
Mm-hmm.
there, right? Because I know it's coming.
Yeah.
But and other because that's if we don't start pushing down those doors, and we don't start experiencing what it's like to be there, and what our challenges are, because I've done that. Now I can talk to you about what my challenges were and how I got around some of those things, that the barriers that they put up. So it'll be a little bit easier for you to do what it is that you have to do,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's just sort of how I was thinking about it. But at the same time, it's just like I could do this in Roxbury. I could do this in Lowell. I could do this in many parts. I could do it in the Commons.
Mm-hmm.
But it was something to me about how blacks have been treated in there that I felt like I needed to take over this space and bring our ancestors into that space. That's what that first part of the openings were, right? Is to bring our ancestors into that space and
Mm-hmm.
to take over that space with our energy and to make that space different and to leave our energy roaming through that space and the beauty of us being in that space
Mm-hmm.
uh, just to me just resonates to this day.
Beautiful. Um, I guess the next question I have is, speaking of art, there was a mural done in the streets of Nubian Square.
Yeah.
It has Black Lives Matter on the street, and I'm curious what you think about that. Is because there's two aspects that I'm interested in hearing your thoughts on. Because one, the fact that we even have to create a mural that says Black Lives Matter, to me, subconsciously is an issue. But then on the flip side of that, to see folks come together to create, regardless of what it was, but to create in a space of unity and camaraderie and love and understanding and empathy, I think that was beautiful to sort of witness. I wasn't actually there, but I saw some images that really reflected that. But then again, I'm conflicted because the fact that we even have to do that, to me, is tough a tough pill to swallow. I'm interested to see what your thoughts on it, particularly it being in Boston, understanding the history of Boston and the racial challenges that we've had through the years.
Yeah, I'm sort of I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
Because some stuff, the process is beautiful,
Yeah.
right? And that people have the opportunity to express themselves and to sort of take some ownership, right? Uh, but I don't know what that's going to do around the aspect of Nubian Square is not really owned by black folks.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
space around it is not, how they're building around it, and if that's going to necessarily change policy. The other parts of it is what happens does the drive fade away as the words fade away, as people drive over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And because if somebody's already created skid marks over it, right? And so I'm struggling with what does that mean. I understood the symbolism like in D.C. where they did it and they put it right in front of the White House, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, and they renamed the street, right?
Yeah.
Black Lives Matter, right? I understand it in New York where they're redoing it right in front of Trump Tower,
Mm-hmm.
right? I understand the symbolic message of it. I think if it was me, I would have loved it if they did it in front of City Hall and
Mm-hmm.
in front of Faneuil Hall, right? And that intersect where Faneuil Hall is over here, that was land dedicated by a former slave owner, and
Mm-hmm.
City Hall that's making the policies. I would have loved to have seen it there, right? But I get the camaraderie around it. But I also see some other art like Pro Black and another person is doing a Breathe mural on Madison Park, right, in conjunction with the MFA, and it's a 5-story photo of a young lady blowing bubbles. That's saying being able to breathe. It's talking about it's an amazing piece of artwork, and some of the other murals around the city that are expressing our blackness in a completely different way. So I'm not against it. Uh, I'm still trying to figure out like what is it really doing for the community, and what's its purpose there that's in that particular community. I would have loved to have seen it be in a community that traditionally it wouldn't be seen in, right? Because I don't think anybody sees it as that's not something that black people will put on the street. But I think being downtown or if it was on Newbury Street, then then to me, there's a difference around that. But I think the process of it, I think the fact that they designed it out and it took where it was, the people that took the time to do it, the energy that they had with it, and I agree, everything about it is beautiful. I'm just not sure where it sort of sits, and should we be doing our own thing versus replicating? Sometimes I'm challenged with us replicating what other cities are doing.
Right.
And is that something that Boston really needed, or
Mm.
was it another message that needed to be put out in the community? Because there's this dichotomy of Black Lives Matter, the organization,
Mm-hmm.
Black Lives Matter, the the words confirming all Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
So there's some challenges around what all of that looks like, and I think sometimes people are just conflicted on the message. Was that the Black Lives Matter group that did it? Was that artists that did it? Are they going to do? I know it's right in front of Black Market, so I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, the flag that they attached to it, the Pan African flag, I think this, was a good touch.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot around it. Uh, but I also believe that as we start to expose art, that we have to say what the narrative is around it, so that some 5 years from now, somebody else doesn't take it and create a different narrative than
Yeah.
what it was when we actually put it out there. And that's what I'm trying to, like. I haven't posted a lot of photos for the protests, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to actually write and decide like which ones I'm going to put up and what that narrative is, so that it remains at the same as time passes. The narrative is what I thought of the photo,
Mm-hmm.
not what somebody else is thinking of it.
Yeah. So my last question is like, what a lot of the things that happen in our community, whether it be an event or someone speaks out, the next question is, so now what, right? And so what do you think from your perspective, we as a community can do to either help you in the work that you're doing, or help push our community forward, as a culture, internationally, but also in our own backyard? What are some tangible things that you can share with us, so that we walk away from this conversation like, okay, I can do these things to help push our community forward?
Well, I think it's a couple of things. So I think one is, I saw a photo that was captioned, "Our destiny is not going to be how white people treat us, but it's going to be about how we treat ourselves,"
Mm.
right? As Black people. So I would say the first thing is we've got to figure out how do we connect, right? How do we move from the bridge of I'm Afro Latina, I'm Latina, I'm Jamaican, I'm Black, I'm whatever it is. I think we need to sort of begin to bridge that gap. So that's one, because I was on a call with a panel with a Latino member, and he said that the Latino community does not believe that the police problem is their problem, that's a Black problem.
Mm.
Right? And so if that's the case, that's a problem for all of us. So one would be to educate yourself about the history of it, and we don't all have the same problems, but systemic racism touches us in many different ways,
Mm-hmm.
whether we're Black, Latino, or whatever we are. So that would be my first thing. I would say the second thing is to figure out what law that's out there that you want to be able to support, right? Because not everybody's going to support all of them. We're not a monolithic,
Right.
person. Just because you're Black, you're going to support all of them. But figure out what one or two laws that you can actually dig into and get some understanding of how to back it, right? So whether that's prison reform, whether that's police reform, whether that's economic uh, components. There's many different groups doing many different things out there. So I would say figure out how you can support uh, one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even saying do 3 or 4. Just figure out one that you can support and dive in uh, and figure out what that means. I
Mm-hmm.
think we as a people have to step away from the exceptionalism of black folks that we tend to put as leaders, right? Because people put me in this boat of being exceptional. I'm not exceptional. The people that's on the ground that's doing the work, that's really doing the work differently, are the ones that are exceptional, and I'm actually learning from them. And
Yeah.
so we've got to figure out how, as the leaders that currently exist, how do we actually be inclusive of them in this process, along with young people.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's, for me, is like, how do we give young people the biggest voice of this movement? Uh, and then I think it's, as always, vote, right? Right? No
Yeah.
matter what you do, you got to vote.
Mm-hmm.
But find your voice somewhere, and lend that voice to the challenges. Be expressive, right? It's fine, but at the same time, take care of you, right? If you can take care of you, then I feel like you can, if you can do some self work, whether that's walking, whether it's being healthy, because health equity, I mean, is a real issue. When you go from Roxbury, that you lived at 58, you go a mile and a half to Back Bay, and they'll live until 91. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that we can sort of tap into. But I think learning and experiencing, uh, and let yourself go and experience some stuff that's uncomfortable for
Mm-hmm.
you. And I'm not gonna say like I love the book that you got up there, right? I'm listening to it. I'm not necessarily a reader right now. I'm an audiobook guy, but I think figure out how to really embrace each other,
Mm-hmm.
learn some of the laws that are there, and figure out like what it is that you can support. Challenge those that represent you to make sure that they're representing you in the way uh, that you believe. Participate, and that doesn't mean go out and march, but participate in activity and act in the way that's best fits for you. Not everybody's an activist,
Right.
uh, and engage with young people and continue to learn. For me, I would say come out to my 5K run,
Yeah.
September 12th, because really that's it's it's black founded, it's black ran. We're doing both a virtual and a in person. If in person is available at that time. Support black businesses, right? Support black artists. Uh, Start to think about like how you're spending your money, where you're spending your money.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think everybody that's in this world should get an entrepreneurial education,
Mm.
right? Because it doesn't mean that you need to start your own business. It would be great if you could, but I think we need to understand it, and we need to
Financial literacy, economic
have that
empowerment.
level of creativity.
Yeah.
Start to think about life in itself, and uh, and I think need to start teaching our young people about entrepreneurship very early,
Yes.
because the 5-year old 30 years ago, you knew what the 10 jobs that they might be able to have that we call success.
Mm-hmm.
Now that 5-year old, by the time they're able to work, their job hasn't even been thought about yet. It's going to be completely different, right?
Right.
So how do we start to think about education and pathways differently? I'll just go back to say there's many opportunities for us as Black folks to engage in a lane that we feel that we can make a difference,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say do it. Right? Don't sit back and continue to watch. Engage, activate, learn, uh, and take care of yourself.
I love it. I love it, man. I feel like we could talk and talk and talk. Like I just want to pick your brain more and more, but I know you got to go. So I just want to again thank you for your time, for your wisdom, for your love. I love you, Thaddeus. You are inspiration. You are somebody, like I said, I look up to, and I continue to watch you pour back into the community, and it helps me and pushes me to want to do the same. So I thank you for your time. I see you, brother. I love you, brother, and I can't wait to see more from the Black Joy Project.
Thank you, brother. I see you. I love you, and I'm going to be watching each one of these episodes, and because I know it's going to be amazing, and I'm looking forward to calling you Doctor.
Thank you, man. I'm gonna keep swinging at it. I'm gonna keep swinging. Thank you, buddy. You have a great rest of the day, man.
All right, you too, brother.
All right, bye bye.
All right, peace.